tonight's speaker, we're honored to have Bill Johnston here. Bill was one of the founders with Susan Temby and a few other people of this meetup. So I think you said earlier, it's your first time here though at this location. Yeah, in this room, but Bill's helped start this meetup and has been here before. Bill's launched successful online communities at Tech Republic, Autodesk, and Dell. He's developed and hosted pioneering online community conferences. The Online Community Conference is one of those. I've been to it. I can attest to it. And the conference is amazing. And now Bill is bringing his thought leadership and collaborative experience to organizations through his consultancy, Structure 3C. And lastly, before Bill comes up for his presentation, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Higher Logic, at Higher Logic, Lithium at Lithium, and Salesforce for the great food we have tonight, the pizza from Goat Hill Pizza at Salesforce and at Community Cloud. So if everyone can give them some shout outs, we'd appreciate it. Thanks, Bill.
I get to rock the karaoke mic. Okay, I do a mean purple rain. Welcome, everyone. It's really, truly, the honor is mine. I have been consistently amazed at the amount of energy that Susan has put into this meetup over the years, especially when, some of us just haven't. We've been so exhausted with work and life that we just kind of fade in and out of the community of community managers. And she's been there just like a constant. And God bless her. I mean, just amazing fortitude. So as it was said, I'm Bill Johnston. I realize I need to have also a less formal bio developed because that was my fancy pants official conference bio. But what I want to talk about tonight really is why communities are imperative to any organization's future. And in fact, I think communities will be the product in the organization in a lot of cases moving forward. As an aside, that's one of many potentially controversial or things you may disagree with that I'll say tonight. Just know that when I'm talking, I'm mostly not making this stuff up. So I have been on the startup side and on the enterprise side for a number of years. I've had to beg for the money. I've had to fight for the money. I've had to fight for strategies. I've had to work with communities in revolt to get them back on track. I've had to redesign community platforms, in one case from scratch. It wasn't Lithium in that case. So I've been there, I've been in your shoes, right? So your mileage may vary on what I say, but just know it comes from a place that is, experienced, I guess, but also I genuinely want to be helpful and sort of tell my story. So I won't go into all of this stuff, but basically I got a huge break in the late 90s with techrepublic.com. I didn't know anything about community at the time. I was hired as a user interface PM. And, within 3 months of launching the site, we never went home because it was a startup in the 90s. And late one night, after we launched threaded discussions, I saw this conversation play out between three guys. I think it was like a Windows, may have been NT. It was like this really obscure configuration issue. And these guys from South America, the States, and Europe were troubleshooting. And it was like the domain of knowledge for this particular issue was probably these three guys represented 50% of the population that could have answered that question. And that's when it clicked for me, right? Communities are incredibly powerful. And that's when I was bit by the bug. So I sort of shifted from a focus on user interface into community development, and the rest, more or less is history. I started Structure 3C this time last year, just shy of my 1-year birthday, which is pretty exciting. And I initially was very focused on what Jeremiah Aoyang and other thought leaders in the space were calling the collaborative economy. After exploring that for a number of months, it occurred to me that we were throwing around a lot of terms and metaphors for contexts that were sort of glorifying the context in and of themselves, but weren't really focused on business outcomes. So in a way, it was word salad, but the constant for me in all of those conversations was around online community. So every gig I got, whether it was with a crowdsourcing site, with a startup, with a nonprofit, there was a community thread to it. So I sort of, if you will, stepped away from my roots for several months last year when I launched Structure, and then in the summer, sort of rediscovered and re-embraced them. So tonight, and again, we have a very intimate group, so if there's something you disagree with, if there's something you want clarification on, please stop me, unless it's you, Cothrell. But what I'd like to talk about, 3 general things: market context, so the why, contextually, of why communities are important; the evolution of online communities, my own damn personal opinion on where we need to go; and then the community and organizations. And that one will be sprinkled throughout the presentation, and then definitely discussion. We have to do it because there's a bullet point on the slide, right? Business used to be a lot more straightforward, right? Back in the good old days, just make stuff, market stuff, sell stuff, people consume it. Hopefully they continue to do so. The machine ran, things were good, right? Well, it worked for a while until we got to global internet at scale. There are a number of factors that contributed to this awesomely brutal slide behind me. The report it's from is called Creative Destruction. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a flip through. These guys studied the S&P 500 data for the last 50-ish years, and they saw that given the trends that they established historically, that by 2027, 75% of the S&P 500 would be turning over annually. So these are companies that are dropping out of the index because they're dying, because they're in decline, because they're dead, or because they're irrelevant. That's pretty powerful, right? I mean, these are not the folks in the S&P. I mean, it's not like, my local Quick Mart. It's like Apple, Ford, GM. It's a big deal. So the interesting thing about this report is they raised a red flag. They really didn't tell you what to do about it, right? So it was like sort of this oh shit moment, but they kind of left us hanging. Same data, in 2014, a group from Deloitte studied it and looked at the commonalities in businesses that were thriving. And they typed businesses in one of 4 categories. I won't go into this in detail, but the one interesting thing that popped out is companies that operated as what they called network operators, were the ones that were thriving, right? These were the ones that were defying the odds, defying gravity, surviving, and in a lot of cases thriving. This is really interesting. I have been speaking at marketing conferences, so this is a fun slide because it makes all the marketing people angry. But Markables did a study looking at the asset value of brand assets and customer relationships. And they unpack the crap out of this in the study. I encourage you to look at it. But the interesting thing is brand asset value is on decline. Customer relationship, from a trend perspective, is rising. This is all a story I think we intuitively know. We're starting to see data at scale to reinforce our stories. My assertion consistently is connected customers are more valuable than disconnected customers. They're more loyal, they're better advocates, they generally spend more, they spend more often, net, they create value. When we were redesigning IdeaStorm in 2011, 2012, this was a community in revolt. It had been the darling of the press, totally overhyped. Some really interesting products came out of it, but in 2011, it had been all but abandoned by the community management team. So we had a community in revolt and a site that hadn't really been updated since launch, really. So my team took it over after someone posted a very gnarly thread tagging Michael Dell in it, and then he called my boss, who called me on a Saturday morning, and I told my wife Sharon to take the kids to the park because I was going to be busy that day. And the first thing we did was we looked at the business value of the community, because I was convinced something was there, and I was also very fascinated by the idea of crowdsourcing and what might happen if done properly. So the really cool thing is we did this value research, and we saw that the ideas that we could, with absolute assurance, say were solely sourced from IdeaStorm had revenue impact in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So these were product ideas that only originated from IdeaStorm, not from the marketing team, product team, just the community. They were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The members themselves were spending 50% more than non-members. Purchase frequency was much higher. And they had an overall higher lifetime value. And then the one stat I wanted to be walking around Round Rock with in my pocket was, what was the value of an idea? And so we took that hundreds of millions of dollars and averaged it over the total idea pool, because I just wanted a gross dumb number to say the average value is about $10,000. So that was really cool and interesting. By the way, I wound up hiring the guy that almost got me fired as the community manager to help me fix and relaunch it, which was really cool. Cy Jervis, he's an awesome guy. So we've talked about the fact that connected companies, network operators, companies that act like communities in the context of the global economy seem to be performing well, better than their peers. We've talked about the fact that connected customers are more valuable. We're starting to see research that shows, from a business asset perspective, that customer relationships are incredibly valuable. And then we have another sort of technological phenomenon, which is, Mark.
Are we doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, going back up.
Sure. Oh God.
Oh, I'll talk. That's fine. So my question here is that, so I have questions about idea generation like this. So one, do you think IdeaStorm type ideas are a good idea for most companies? Two, so the revenue from IdeaStorm members, that's not because of IdeaStorm. That's just the people that are participating in the community itself.
Maybe. So it's correlative. It's not causal.
Okay.
But we also haven't disproven that it's not causal. So it's open.
Okay.
Admittedly. From an ideas perspective, do I think every company should have some sort of crowdsourcing initiative? No, absolutely not.
Where does it work?
I'll get into that actually in a couple of slides. It works well. It works well at Autodesk. It works well at hardware startups. It works well at consumer packaged good companies that are manufacturing some of their products or that need differentiation other than price. It works in a lot of cases. It doesn't work in insurance. It usually doesn't work in financial products. If there's a tangible good, it tends to work really well. I mean, I guess is the simplest way I would state it at this point. So the last thing is, and this is something I've been resisting. Mobile's taken over the world, right? And my arguments to date have been, you can't really do heavy lift content creation or collaboration on mobile, really, truly. People just really want to consume via mobile, right? Or it's very superficial. And I think all of those things may be true, but the fact is there's an inevitable trajectory towards this thing dying at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, and these things evolving like crazy, and the ecosystem around them, and wearables, sensors, et cetera, becoming the dominant form factor for experiencing content networks, what have you. What does that look like? How does it feel? What are the implications for community? It's one of the things I want to dig in with you guys on. But this is an inevitability. I'm now convinced after arguing till I'm blue in the face with people I really respect for the last couple of months. If you really want the sort of Kool-Aid conversion experience, just binge on Benedict Evans' podcasts. So Benedict Evans is, I think, an analyst with, I don't want to butcher his title because he's awesome, and I'd love to meet him, but he works at Andreessen Horowitz, and probably one of the smartest guys I know by nature of his content. I don't know him. Benedict Evans. But he has these amazing analogies around why mobile is taking over the world. So we talked about a bunch of stuff, a bunch of contextual factors that are pushing for, I would say, an evolution. So what do we need? We need a new and comprehensive approach to online communities as the way forward, I would say. We need to evolve. And this is not just incremental evolution from our mostly forums-based communities. This is a very drastic evolution to prepare for the mobile ecosystem. One where we look at the networked marketplace, both from a web and mobile perspective, because the web's not going to die overnight, and in fact, it may not ever die, but it will transform. Where we look at the market, total addressable market, as a crowd, and I'll talk about what that means in a sec. Where relationships are formed vis-a-vis community and managed vis-a-vis community. And where collaboration isn't the software competing for your attention with email and that nobody really uses anyways. It's really about shared resources, shared value, doing work together. Not just internally, but also with your customers. So what do we need to get there? I think we need our version of design thinking, right? We need tools, we need frames to think through navigating these circumstances. And a term that I've been throwing out and I'm getting kind of attached to, and so if you guys don't like it, it would be very helpful because it's kind of early days, is network thinking. I hope I spelled it right. I did. So network thinking. So I'm starting to build the platform around what this looks like, what it means, and again, the intention here is not to make a bunch of ethereal content and then try to build a network and sell each of you guys seats for $30,000 to it or anything like that. It's to like legitimately give you content that's helpful. So would love your feedback. So the first thing is you absolutely have to understand your customers. This is table stakes. It should go without saying. Amazingly, it kind of doesn't because it's amazing what we don't know and how hard it is sometimes to actually start that outreach with even a core group of community members. I mean, how many of you have inherited a community where there's no leadership council, there's no regular interactions with lead users? It's like there's this weird membrane between the company and the community. I think most, if not all of us, have encountered that, and it's like, holy shit, it's still happening. So, sorry, but starting with first principles, understand your customers, who they are, why they're motivated to build relationships with each other, where they want to build relationships, how they want to build relationships with each other and you comes along for the ride in every one of these statements. And then most importantly, and this is the business question, what value can you provide as a host and as community convener, right? It really does get down to those simple things. And then all business decisions, I would assert, flow from them. Okay, it's reductive. I'm trying to get it down to the core. So if there's something really, truly missing philosophically, please let me know. Sure.
One of the things that seems to be missing is what can they provide that provides value to you? And maybe that's just assuming customers because they're buying the product.
Right.
But that seems to be kind of a narrow view of the customer because the customer has so much value to offer you, ideas.
Yep.
So where did that?
I think it's 5. If that's the value, if there's a point around value exchange, it's 5, right? But that also gets into. So go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, looking at this list of 1 through 5, about the question. Question 5 is, what value can you provide as host to strengthen and deepen those relationships? I also think of the question, what value can customers provide to you as an organization? And not simply assuming that the customer's role is to buy shit from you, but that the customer can have a richer, more complex relationship with you in terms of their ideas and their creativity and all
Absolutely.
that stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, and by extending that thought, community is also not just about extracting value from the customers, right?
Right.
So, excellent point, and thank you. I'll be fleshing that value statement out. Okay, so the second thing, and I know I'm going through this a little fast, but I definitely want to have conversation at the end. So thinking of markets as networks. So if you think of, and this doesn't even solely apply to commercial organizations, it could apply to nonprofits, NGOs, even governmental organizations as well. But the denominator, like the largest set, right, is your equivalent of total addressable market. Like it's the most people you could possibly engage, right, as the denominator, right? So what if we thought about that, for lack of a better term, as our crowd, right? So that's everybody who's potentially interested, varying degrees of connected. Maybe some people aren't connected at all, but that when you rally them and connect them, it's around a specific point of need or a specific problem or a specific opportunity. And these relationships sort of ebb and flow, right? They ebb and flow, like a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, a crowdsourcing campaign on First Build, right? They come together around specific things and then disperse, but they're sort of implicitly connected within a market context. And so examples, Airbnb, Lyft, Indiegogo. Community, that same market network, a smaller percentage of those folks have a need and a desire to stay connected over time. And you as host, nurture that relationship by hosting, encouraging, engaging, and all the wonderful things that community managers do. But it's a significant degree of intimacy that's more tightly bound than the crowd. And then I think in a lot of ways a net new, and examples of this are the Instructables community at Autodesk, the Makerspace community at Maker Media. A fundamentally new type of collaboration is collaborative organization. So this is where you're essentially treating the customer as a partner, right? So you're co-creating, you're sharing value, you're sharing risk, right? But this is compensation above and beyond giving them a badge. This is a group of people coming together to solve a design challenge and then being compensated for it when that challenge is sold, or being paid to produce a design for a case for a new piece of hardware. And sorry, all my analogies are kind of from the maker and hardware startup space because that's where I was at Autodesk. So sorry that it's so segment specific. Sure.
So what about, sometimes customers want to do that because they want to do that and they don't need to be paid. And why do you assume that they have to be paid in order for it to be valuable?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to say that. If I said it.
No, you didn't say it.
How about that?
I make leaps of.
What I am saying is the models based upon extrinsic motivation need a hard look, right? I mean, I personally have benefited from hundreds of thousands of software users providing support to my customers for free. I think those days are numbered.
So
And I think that's one extreme end of the spectrum. I think asking customers to do work for you just out of the goodness of their hearts and for some feeling of benefiting the community, I think for commercial organizations, not cost-based organizations, or maybe even like things like B Corps where there's a higher mission, I think the days are numbered for that.
So I just want to differentiate. So you talked about a support role, and what about an ideation role? Because a lot of times if you love the product,
Yep.
you just want to make it better because, I mean, I love Airbnb. I would do anything for them. So I would love to be part of it because then I'm more part of it, right? But doing support over and over and over and over is harder.
Yeah, I mean, I think Airbnb needs your help because I think that category of business, I have to be careful because I'm under NDA with one of them. That category of business, their sort of Achilles heel that will kill them when the venture capital runs out is scaling supply side engagement and support. right? So ideation, sure. I mean, if you want to do it out of the goodness of your heart, I think that's great. I personally struggle with that being a sustainable model over the long haul. Unless there's a value exchange, maybe you directly benefit from submitting that idea because it improves the program, in which case it's a fair value exchange. To put a fine point on it, what I'm specifically talking about are what I consider very lopsided value exchanges. Yeah.
Extrinsic motivation?
Oh, sorry.
I heard you say models based on extrinsic motivation are going the way of the dodo bird, essentially. Do you mean extrinsic or intrinsic?
I mean
Intrinsic.
intrinsic when motivated by lopsided value exchanges.
Okay, but you mean intrinsic,
Yes.
not extrinsic. Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. You guys are awesome. It's like so good to have like the brain trust here. I genuinely mean that. I mean, the knowledge is in the network. So a market network, real example. Well, not a real example, an example that I pitched Levi's. So what if Levi's went completely cuckoo nutso and did what I'm suggesting here? What would it look like? There it is. So the first thing is Levi's products, especially 501s, actually increase in value after they're sold, right? So there's this thriving aftermarket thing going on with just selling stuff on eBay or embellishments where people are making products from the jeans, right? So you can let that happen, or you can figure out a way to play in that world and maybe even pull some of that stuff back in to their retail shops. Or you can sue people for doing it, which is totally an option. Back to the ideation question. Levi's has a kick-ass innovation lab. It's called Eureka. It's run by a fellow Kentuckian, which is why I love it. But they explore fabrics, finishes, different kinds of products. They could easily flip that online and start to explore finish, but also explore whole products. And then that feeds back into the ecosystem. And then back to Community 101, right? Treating community as an ecosystem, not a destination. Aligning all the social channels, aligning all, or at least engaging, at least identifying as a first step, all the fan sites globally, including, this massive, how do you say it, otaku, the fetish-like fans in Japan who are like crazy about denim. Like none of that stuff's going on. They have this amazing sort of latent value hanging out globally in the digital realm, and very little is being done to manage it, right? So those were just 3 examples of retail, innovation vis-a-vis product ideas, and just, some basic block and tackle community management that could start to help Levi's take advantage of this market network opportunity. Sir.
Maybe just to specify, why does them getting involved in that actually increase the value of it if it's already
Well, so
happening
that's the
naturally?
question, right? Can they, as a brand, define how they can add value? And I would say if they can't, that's kind of sad, don't you think? I mean, they're out in the world, they're out in the retail world, like they're building programs, they're spending millions of dollars. If they can figure out how to, and I'm not saying like just blindly go jump in front of every train, but I'm saying the creative people at Levi's with all of their brand heritage and great stories could likely come up with some really interesting ideas for opportunities to jump in front of. So where they can add value, they should try it out. Where it's happening organically and they can clearly add no value by participating in the exchanges, so be it. But like they have an archivist, right, who has samples of like every flipping pattern ever, every fabric, like she knows like everything that ever happened at Levi's. You can't tell me unleashing her on the web wouldn't be badass in some of these independent communities. I don't think so. I mean, I only saw it because I was in headquarters and they had this display and it's like this archivist lady and I'm like, holy crap, I want to meet her, So, and David, I'm not saying like the old adage of like, go engage, jump in front of everything. But I am saying like, we could be a little more motivated, strategic, and methodical about how we do it. Okay, here's one a lot of crowds don't like, but I hope you guys will. I would assert the customer relationship is a community management problem and responsibility. And that my ideal organization of the future would have every team touching the customer relationship and interaction under one roof, and we would all sing Kumbaya. How awesome would that be? Silo busting to the extreme. But this isn't just high-level ethereal stuff that I'm spouting. There are specific things you can do tomorrow to start inserting yourselves in processes and create a ton of value. So here's a really goofy, simple example. So when I took over the community and social responsibilities for Fusion 360 at Autodesk, they told me I was in charge of marketing automation. And I said, the day I drop dead, I'll be in charge of marketing automation. And so they weren't really asking, so I took it. And I kind of ignored it for a couple of weeks because I was frankly pissed that it had fallen in my lap. And then I thought, what if we make this a community management problem? Right? What if we take this opportunity, these horrible drip emails that just absolutely suck, and it just makes me cringe that I'm responsible for them. What if we make them suck a lot less? And further, why don't we make them opportunities for opening the door to questions back and engagement? So we totally rebooted the whole thing. I told the team what I wanted, but I stepped back and let the community managers design it themselves, and awesome things happened. So the emails were coming from the community managers' accounts. They wrote all the content. They were responsible for responding to all the inbound emails, and then we had sort of a kill switch for if it started taking up too much of their time. We had backstops to figure out how to scale it with support. And amazing things happened. Like the open rate went from sub-single digit to 40% when we launched them. It was crazy. And it was this was stuff I kind of didn't care about at the time. But just sort of putting the community management lens on relationship development via something simple like marketing automation made awesome things happen. So imagine if that started happening with all the marketing stuff that we cringe at. How cool would that be? What I'm saying is there are a lot of conversations about community demanding a seat at the table, about demanding budget, about being ignored. And the thing is, there's clearly value. There's clearly quantifiable value. And instead of waiting for it, go get it. Right? Go get it. Sure.
So in big companies now, a lot of times they have customer success teams.
Yes.
So how does what you're talking about relate to customer success?
I think it has a lot to do with customer success. The customer success teams that I've seen, have you seen one that's very versed in online communities?
No, it's mainly a phone thing. It's mainly a phone consulting thing, almost always.
So I love the idea. I mean, again, back to that, all the customer touches being in one house. I love the idea of some customer success team on steroids that's amplified by community. I think that's a great idea and a great metaphor. All right, so now crowdsourcing-ish stuff. The fourth thing in this network thinking platform is opening the aperture on community, right? Whether we like it or not, a large portion of the stuff we do every day is related in sort of this inertia way with forums-based support communities. That was a realization that I came to very, very slowly, and it was very painful. But a lot of our interaction models, a lot of our incentive models, a lot of the way we structure teams, a lot of the way that we talk about value, it starts with support as sort of patient zero. I'm not saying there's anything intrinsically bad or wrong with that, but I am saying more opportunity will be created when we can acknowledge that that's comfortable and move beyond, right? And look at, if we start to apply community building principles to every corporate function, what does that look like? In some cases, it will be a hot mess. But in some cases, there's real opportunity. I'm certain. An example. So GE, right? Fits and starts of innovation. rooted in a very innovative personality. They have this facility in Louisville, Kentucky called First Build, and it's a makerspace. First Build's also complemented by an online community. So any reasonably competent adult can walk into First Build, take a safety class, and then start using some really cool equipment. Further, they can start hacking up on GE appliances. If they come up with a really awesome idea, either in the shop or in some cases they run challenges online, that product can go to market. So there's actually a pizza oven that came out of First Build that's for sale now. So they've actually brought projects to market and products to market because of hackers coming in and tooling around in the workshop and also being complemented by the brain power online. I think that's a pretty amazing thing. I was especially excited that it was happening in my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. I have a client named Hivoto in Berlin, and they're essentially a crowdsourcing community. So they kind of split my model a little bit, so I almost wasn't going to talk about them because it wasn't self-reinforcing. But they have this amazing community of design professionals. So this is everybody from the visual designer to architects to industrial designers online in this community of designers, and they're given challenges, right? Which could range from designs for new surface designs for a line from Victorinox, the Swiss Army knife company, to solving really intense challenges like replacing diesel engines for water pumps in India with something more sustainable, right? So this community is just this amazing group of people, right? And it sort of splits the model because they're together around these design challenges, incented by, in some cases, doing good, but mostly compensation, right? Because they get paid if the products are brought to market. The community actually decides, based upon the work product, who gets what percentage of the take, if you will, which I thought was just completely insane and awesome, right? So, if we open the aperture as wide as we can in our circumstances, what does community with a capital C look like? And then the last stop on our tour is plan for the mobile ecosystem. So we're starting to see all these crazy charts like mobile messaging completely destroying social networks. Mobile messaging is one dimension of mobile. If that were it, I wouldn't be as excited about it, right? I think other form factors will follow messaging. Messaging was relatively speaking, the simple nut to crack. But the fact is, mobile is real. It's coming. It's growing. It's not going to slow down anytime soon. P.S. the global population is going to add 2 billion, in the next 20, 30 years? There's going to be a lot of mobile devices. So, with mobile, especially with your current communities, because a lot of us did responsive designs for mobile, right? Is that good enough? Is there an opportunity to do a native app? Possibly. What would that look like? Would it be beyond messaging? Would it be beyond consumption? Because when I surface this topic with community managers, the first thing is, we got it covered, because we have a responsive site. Maybe. So I'm working with a client who has a web top community that's also responsive and a mobile app. And at first, it was a little bit of a heart attack because the web was really kicking butt and the apps weren't getting traction. Then we tweaked some things, introduced private messaging, et cetera, et cetera. All of a sudden, the apps are starting to overtake the web. Pretty cool. And then what are the interaction opportunities, as I mentioned a few moments ago, beyond just messaging? Because this is going to be where the fun stuff happens in the next couple of years. And personally, that's where I want to play. So with network thinking, I don't know, that's where I want to play. And so, would you like to get involved in the exploration? So I'm starting a research project next week. It will start with qualitative research around a lot of the stuff that we've talked about tonight, particularly focused on state of mobile, attitudes towards mobile, and what people are doing. but also coloring outside the lines a little bit because I just am generally curious about community stuff. I'm looking for case studies, so I'll be seeking out and developing case studies around mobile communities and mobile ecosystems. And then we're having private roundtables in San Francisco and Palo Alto. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, please see me after the session. And then I also have a tool that I've developed as part of my practice that essentially guides you through the collaborative organization model that I talked about. It will guide you through essentially available assets and customer need. It's a simple 11 by 17 two-sheet PDF. If you'd like that, it's yours, just ask. So that's what's going on with network thinking. So I'll leave you with this, which I think is awesome. First, I just think this picture of Mark Andreessen is it's just awesome. It's just awesome. So he's like, he doesn't blog anymore. So he just like tweets a bunch. So this guy would in particular benefit from the expansion, removal of the character limit. But I was up late working on something one night and I caught this tweet storm, which I thought was just awesome. So he says, in tech in the early 90s, it felt like all the good ideas were already taken. This is before he launched Netscape, right? So there was a point where he's like, shit, it's all been done. But then he did Netscape, right? Which, holy crap. Thank God he did Netscape. And further, he asserts, he feels like we're just getting started now, which gives me goosebumps, right? It's just like, no matter how tired, jaded, sick of talking about community management you are, it's just starting to happen now. Like, guys, I'm telling you, this is our time. Okay, so I just wanted to leave you with that because it's one of the reasons I get out of bed every morning. So I love going on this journey with you guys. I think it's awesome. Informal meetups like this where we like just objectively share what's on our mind, our practice, our data, even if we don't completely agree with each other. And I mean, Joe and I have conversations all the time and we still walk away not wanting to punch each other. Like, this is what it's all about. This is how we're gonna advance. These open conversations, and then instead of waiting for our place at the table, figuring out ways to take it, to build a seat if there's not one. So thank you very much. I don't know how we're doing on time, but I'd love to have some conversations.
So we have at least, I'd say, a good 15 minutes to see how the conversation goes. And if anyone has questions, I have a question, but first open it up to the audience.
Sure. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. Lots of really good stats. I'm curious, just like, so you kind of talked about community in the future in a bunch of different contexts. Right. There's the collaborative company. There's community being applied across the board to every touch point with a customer. Yep. There's this idea that the entire world is going to be distributed. And I've, been really fascinated myself in a lot of those same exact trends. And just curious, like, what your thoughts are on what that means for this as a professional industry and where it's going as far as, like, is it something where we have a seat on the table? Is community something that literally everyone from marketing to product to design is going to be thinking about? Is it a dedicated department, or is it literally just a changing worldview on how businesses are formed? And what does that mean for us as community professionals?
Yeah.
If I could just add to that, does that mean, will community dissolve? Because there's been a lot of talk too, like, in the future it'll be everywhere and there won't be a defined, either position or department. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would love, first of all, I think the term is problematic. And I think the term community manager is problematic. I mean, I think there's a lot of baggage with both terms, and it breaks my heart to say it, but I believe that. I think the intention and directionality of a lot of community practices that I'm seeing should aid marketing, to be honest, right? I think it's a more humane and effective way to do what we call at least large swaths of marketing right now. Maybe not all the acquisition, but everything else in the customer life cycle. What it means professionally? I really struggle with that. I mean, you and I in particular have tried to charge that hill a couple of times, with you currently charging it, David, and doing a good job, legitimately. Like, I don't know where it goes. Like, I don't know if there needs to be a nonprofit organization around sort of the future of the discipline, which we've talked about, that connects everybody, but then lets everybody have their, individual practices and businesses. It seems unlikely that will happen. But I don't know. I mean, education, awareness, advocacy have all been topics that have floated around for the last 15 or so years. Certifications as a way to legitimize the practice. And, I got to tell you, like, as much as I support it, like, I've never hired somebody because they were, no offense, lithium certified. It's just, it didn't matter. And so what would make it matter? I don't know. But I do think more enlightened organizations, and Mark, to your point about customer success, maybe it's the customer organization, which combines big chunks of stuff that is about customer touch.
Because you said marketing, but typically that's not once you have the customer, that's getting the customer.
Sorry?
I think you said that mainly it belongs in marketing, but in my experience,
Not exactly.
that doesn't cover once you have the customer. Like,
So in 2 organizations that I've worked at, it does. So
okay.
yeah. So, I mean, that's the other thing is we're also trying to navigate, industrial age organizational models that were really meant to essentially turn us into a giant machine. Joe has some ideas.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. One of the things I've observed is sort of B2B. Yeah, the thing I'm always asking myself is, where are different industries in this evolution? Where are different functions in this evolution? Because they're all in different places.
Yep.
For us at Lithium, media and entertainment and high tech started 20 years ago. Telecom started 10 years ago. Retail started 5 years ago. Financial services started 2 years ago. Public utilities started 6 months ago, right?
Yep.
In functions, support started 15 years ago or 20 years ago, right? Marketing is still getting started. I think, maybe they're 5 years old in terms of their, product development is probably a couple years old in terms. So it's kind of rolling through different functions and industries in different ways. It's not changing whole companies. It's, we're transforming, but in a very sort of partial way. But one interesting thing to me about B2B, and maybe because your experience is so B2B flavored, I know it's both, but I think marketing folks in B2B get this in a way that marketing folks in consumer often don't, because they're already in a relationship with customers, where I think consumer marketing folks just think they have a relationship with customers. B2B folks really do, right? They have a two-way conversation. They're hearing from those folks. High price point, expectation of sort of a high touch relationship. So I'm kind of finding that if I look across all of Lithium communities, B2B marketing is much more sophisticated from a community perspective than B2C is, in a funny way.
Yeah.
Even though you read all about consumer marketing and social.
Well, I mean, the stakes are higher. I mean, the use cases I can't talk about with numbers attached are in particular a community I built for large enterprise that had, a lot more than millions of dollars in value and effect. And it wasn't doing support. It was retaining and engaging people buying big iron, so servers and related hardware at large enterprises. Mark, you have a twinkle in your eye.
No, so early in the slide set, you said that your belief is that forums are going to die or are on their way out. But I didn't actually see anything in your slide set that, I mean, you kind of talked around that, but is that because it's just going to be diffuse? It's going to diffuse out into all of these organizations and magically appear other places?
Because it was like bullet time in the Matrix.
Yeah.
I mean, forums will never truly die, just like CB radios didn't die. I just don't think it's going to be a primary form factor moving forward. I could be wrong. Email is never going away. I I guess my point with making a hyperbolic statement like that is, can we, for the love of God, figure out other form factors beyond threaded messaging and badging and MVP programs? Like, can we just fucking move past that?
And so as a follow-up question to that, which actually came in via YouTube from Susan, who just caught the tail end
Hello, Susan.
after her flight to DC, what do you think that future is?
Well, I mean, we're seeing, and again, like 6 months ago, I would have laughed myself out of the room, but like, holy crap, I'm using Slack, and like this stream, when contextualized, is actually insanely helpful. I'm not talking about your unedited Facebook stream or Twitter without TweetDeck, but highly contextual streams and messages would be one form factor, I think.
Do you know of any good community managers using Slack well? Susan just
No,
asked
I mean,
that right as you were talking about it. It's like she's in your brain.
I don't think you should use Slack for community. But I'm saying that's potentially a form factor. I mean, the research is really about starting to find these use cases, right? I mean, I have a handful. I have the Own It community whose center of gravity is on a mobile app, and it's starting to grow in ways that I told them it never would, right? So I was wrong, and I found out why, right? And there will be more of those case studies in the next months and years.
Could you talk about this question of the future from kind of a different angle of what, for those of us interested in this space and interested in online communities, growing and becoming a deeper part of all businesses and organizations, kind of what are the first steps that if you want to take your online community and move it from a kind of generic support role or the pigeonholed box that the kind of senior executives may put it in, and you want to kind of make a business case, see it as something more expansive. Kind of what would you advise as the beginning steps for someone who wants to kind of take that project on?
I would answer these questions. And then specifically, here's what I did. I got the discussion groups running really well, and I quantified the value vis-a-vis support savings and some affinity. That was years ago. And then I started looking around for other opportunities. I saw that our evangelists were on the road and well-loved, on the road constantly, and exhausted. There wasn't enough of them to go around. Holy crap, Lynn Allen, the AutoCAD evangelist plus a blog equals magic. I launched those, 8 years ago. When I got back to Autodesk, there were 180, I think 180, there's some 100-ish number of thriving, well-produced, well-designed in a lot of cases. Well, no, they were on TypePad. I take that back. So maybe not well-designed, but solid blogs, right? From the blog program, we saw success. We were able to, the blogs as a category, and I'm just telling you this case study example, sort of on the fly. So the blogs as a category in our metrics package went from when looking at our global sites, our global websites that were paying, hundreds of thousands of dollars to produce and maintain, the blogs that cost like a couple $100 plus people's time went from the bottom of the stack to the top 10 in like a year, right? So there was an ROI assertion there, right? Just based upon effort and impact. From there, we started making the case for industry portals. Only one of these survived. So this was not my finest hour. I got out over my skis a little bit. So we did one for manufacturing, which was just for general industrial designers and people doing machines and whatever. It was a bad idea. The one that hit and kicks ass is called Area. So it's a community for content sharing, for tutorials, for peer-to-peer mentoring, for artists in the film and game industries. There was a passionate product team behind it that wanted to engage, wanted to know their customers, And it was just the perfect storm of the right kind of support internally, a lot of passion internally, a lot of passion and need and thirst in the industry. That thing's still rocking, I think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, but that thing's still rocking the house, and it's, old. So I went from, the basic case study of support to what was essentially social media at the time to just sort of trading successes and exploring and trying to understand what customers needed from us and what the opportunity was.
Great, thanks. So we have time, maybe 2 more questions.
Hi, Bill. Thanks. I have one comment about forums going away. I would be a bit more radical than that. Say, forums were never community. It always used to drive me mad, and apologies to Joe here, the HP lithium community, to me, was never a community. I would go there with my printer problem, ask the question, and be out of there. Like 2 years later, when I got a new HP printer, I'd be back in. To me, those forums were never community.
So I would assert in any support community, there's a graph of probably 50 to 100 people that would take a bullet for each other, and that for real is like they're barbecuing at each other's house. Like the MVP program at Microsoft amplified this and sort of took advantage.
I totally agree with that. And the expert elite,
but it's not a community at scale.
No.
A great platform like Lithium and still not been a community. No, I'm just saying that there's a difference between, I don't think that it was the fact that it was a forum. I think it's the fact that it was a support community for something that you only cared about when you had a problem. Right? That's not the makings of a community.
I mean, we
It's like your city, right? Some people very engaged at any given point in time, some people not very engaged.
Yeah, I mean,
at
we
any
used to
given
have
point in time.
entire sessions at the Unconference about what is community, and I think I specifically stopped allowing them the second year. I mean, I will say there seems to be, in my direct experience, so your mileage may vary, there seems to be a direct correlation between the depth and time of product experience, right? So for the customer, how long and intensely they use the product and the community opportunity. So people were in our software for hours a day. So they had an intense relationship with it. So therefore there was the opportunity for an intense relationship with other users. Your mileage may vary on that heuristic. Hey, Crystal.
Question from YouTube, from Caesar on YouTube.
Hey, Caesar.
Where does community as a product fit into what you've been talking about
Oh,
tonight?
yeah. So imagine a software product that an industrial designer uses. Again, sorry for the domain-specific references. But imagine a SaaS software product that an industrial designer uses, and in the community, there's peer-to-peer mentoring, learning, ready-made content, et cetera, and the value of that grows over time to the extent that there's a higher perceived value in the community around the product than the product itself. So there could be a case to be made for paying for access to the whole thing with the product being given away for free, community as a product. I mean, there have been sort of content-driven, community-ish as product things for a while. But I think in some cases, and again, I think it relates to the relationship with the product from a quality of experience and depth of experience perspective. I think that's where the opportunities might lie. You might start to mine for them. And that further, when that's networked, and so the value's amplified based upon the number of people actually participating and contributing, that's where I think the community as a product opportunity lies. And the specific example I'm pulling out of thin air right now would be that SaaS design tool. But I'll think of others after I'm finished talking if you want more.
So we have time, so people have questions still. Please, raise your hand, especially those who haven't yet.
So when I heard that question, the first thing that came to my mind was something like Nextdoor
Next
with
door.
community as product as opposed to physical product. But
That's interesting. I never thought of that. I mean, Nextdoor, maybe not, just because, you know, they're struggling for, in a lot of neighborhoods, they're struggling for adoption because it doesn't work unless all your neighbors are on it or a large number of your neighbors are on it. And because of the authentication process, like
that's what you just described, right? In terms of depth and breadth for.
Yeah, but that's not a product, right? My house isn't really a product to Nextdoor. I mean, yeah, but I do that on Facebook.
But that person asked the question is community as product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Nextdoor could be a community product. It's just, it's not one I would pay for. Yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah, I mean, technically, those are communities as product. Well, you don't pay for it.
I have a hard time with that as defining product.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. It's just once you take the people will pay for it part out of the equation, the definition becomes so diffuse. It's hard to quantify anything as in or out of bounds, I guess is how I would go back. I mean, other communities as products would be socialmedia.org, hypothetically. You pay a lot of money, you get 5
Associations,
seats.
right? Associations
exactly.
is one
Thank
model.
you, Joe.
You pay to be a member, TSIA.
Yep.
That's, Gartner,
Yep.
you might argue, right?
Yep.
You get access to the analysts, et cetera.
Yep.
I've never forgotten the presentation we heard by, I think it was Scott Heffernan, who just presented, I think, this year. You and I must have heard 15, almost 20 years ago, where he talked about Meetup. And when Meetup started, they first thought they were going to charge people to attend the meetups. And then they realized this is absolutely never going to work. People are not going to pay to. Then they thought the next model was going to be we're going to charge venues for hosting the meetups because we're driving business to them, blah, 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 blah. And then they realized the logistics of that is impossible, right? How are we going to collect the money? How are we going to? And what they found was literally the only thing that people would pay for is the ability to create communities, right? Those advanced tools to create So there may be some business in supporting people who are supporting communities. That might be the first opportunity to say, and maybe that, maybe that's potentially the YouTube model, right?
Yeah.
YouTube is a platform for convening my community and then creating commercial opportunities from that. But generally speaking, whenever somebody comes to me and says, I want to create a community, I want to charge people to use it, I say, you're going to have a very tough hill to climb in order to do it, because I just don't see that work. I mean, there aren't great examples of that.
Anyone else? Any final questions? Thanks again. It's been, I prefer these smaller, more intimate groups, especially with the audience, that we have here asking really challenging questions. And it's clear that online community's future is open, has the chance to be really rich, but also, has a lot of so many unknowns. Anyone else have a final question? Well, let's give Bill a big thank you.
Yeah, I would say there's this great line by Howard Rheingold. I don't know if it actually was in Virtual Communities, his book, or he just says it a lot, but his assertion was what it is up to us, and that's the future, right? It's going to be exactly what we build and what we make it, or not. Thank you guys. It's been awesome. If I can help with my services, let me know just to get a little pitch in. Or if you want to be part of the mobile research and/or you want the worksheet, please let me know. Thanks. It's awesome.